For 3 minutes, a man with a badge believed he could kick a woman to the ground and walk away without consequence. Deputy Ryan Kessler thought Evelyn Ward was just another black woman passing through Monroe County. No badge, no allies, no power. He shoved her, searched her vehicle without cause, and drove his boot into her shin like she didn't belong. But when they picked Evelyn Ward, they didn't know who they were messing with. They didn't know she was a senior FBI agent, a woman who had dismantled cartels, exposed corruption, and stood in front of Congress. What came next wasn't just justice. It was a reckoning that shook an entire department, toppled a sheriff, and exposed the hidden hands of a powerful political machine. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from and make sure to subscribe, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about one man, it's about all of us. Sunlight filtered through the gas station canopy that afternoon, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. A gentle breeze stirred the gravel. In that silence, beneath the weight of history and heat, a storm was quietly preparing to rise. The late afternoon sun hung low over the Tennessee hills, casting long golden shadows across an old roadside gas station that time had nearly forgotten. Paint peeled from its rusted awnings. A soda machine hummed in lazy protest, leaning like it was tired of standing. A place you'd drive past without blinking, unless you were low on fuel or fate had something planned. That's why Evelyn Ward, a tall black woman in her early 50s, found herself there. She wore simple jeans, a navy windbreaker, and dark sunglasses that masked the lines of quiet authority in her gaze. To anyone passing by, she looked like just another traveler, weary from the road. But beneath the surface, Evelyn carried the weight of 1,000 hard-won battles. She didn't come from wealth. She came from grit, from a generation that knew how to keep your head down and your spine straight. And that's exactly how she stood as she filled her tank, until a slow crunch of gravel shattered the stillness. A county cruiser rolled in behind her. Deputy Ryan Kessler stepped out. White, square-jawed, buzz-cut. The kind of man who wore his badge like a birthright. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just walked up, boots heavy against the pavement. "You lost, ma'am?" he asked, his voice low, condescending, not curious, not kind. Evelyn didn't flinch. "Just getting gas," she replied, her tone calm but firm, like steel wrapped in velvet. He circled the car, eyeing it like he owned the world and she had stolen it. "No local plates. What's your business in Monroe County?" Evelyn met his stare without blinking. "Filling my tank, that's all." And that was when something shifted. His hand moved to his belt, not to his weapon yet, but to the radio clipped beside it. A signal, a stance, a warning. In that moment, every breath felt heavier. Have you ever been in a place where someone smaller than you in spirit tries to make themselves larger by force? How did you respond? The question isn't whether Evelyn had the right to be there. The question is why, after all these years, that right still had to be defended. She didn't show her badge, not yet. She needed to know how deep this would go. And the answer was coming. Fast. Evelyn didn't move as the deputy circled her SUV. She kept her breathing steady, her posture relaxed. She'd been in tighter spots than this. Sweat-drenched safe houses in Bogota, war rooms in D.C., but there was something uniquely sharp about American small-town scrutiny. It didn't come with guns drawn. It came with assumption, contempt, and a smile that never reached the eyes. Kessler didn't bother hiding it. He stepped in close, too close, and jabbed a finger toward her windshield. "No city decal. No inspection tag. I'm gonna need to see your license." Evelyn reached into her jacket, slow, deliberate. She handed over her driver's license. Not her badge. Not yet. He snatched it like it was contaminated. "Evelyn Ward," he muttered, tasting her name like it offended him. "And what brings you out here, Miss Ward?" She could have ended it right there. Could have flashed the gold badge tucked just beneath her waistband, the one that read, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent in Charge, Southeastern Division. But she didn't. Because she needed to see something first. She needed to know just how far this man would go, and he didn't disappoint. Kessler tossed her ID onto the hood and started yanking open her car door. "Step back," he ordered. "Gonna take a quick look." "No warrant, no probable cause," Evelyn said quietly. He smirked. "I don't need one for someone acting suspicious." Acting suspicious, that old lie wrapped in a new uniform. She stepped back, fists clenched but low, as he dug through her glove compartment like a raccoon in trash. Receipts flew, papers crumpled. A photo of her late mother slid out and landed at his boot. Still, she said nothing. Because it wasn't time yet. You ever had to shrink your power just to stay safe? Just to survive a moment that should never have happened in the first place? When he turned to face her again, smug and triumphant, she let her gaze rest on him, not with fear, but with calculation. Evelyn Ward wasn't nobody. She was the storm he never saw coming. And in less than 3 minutes, that storm would hit. It started with a shove. Not a warning, not a raised voice, just Deputy Kessler's palm slamming into Evelyn Ward's right shoulder, knocking her into the side of her SUV. The steel thudded behind her like a gavel. Her jaw clenched, but her stance held. "That is not necessary," she said, voice steady as glass. But it didn't matter. Kessler had crossed the line and found no resistance. That was all the permission he needed. He leaned into her passenger seat now, rifling through her glove box like a man searching for guilt itself. A protein bar hit the floor. A notepad, a flash drive she used for classified reports, kicked aside like gum wrappers. His disrespect wasn't just about authority. It was personal, casual, deep. Evelyn stood still, watching, not because she was afraid, but because she was calculating. Because survival often looks like silence, and justice sometimes waits behind clenched teeth. "My registration's in the top folder," she said evenly. He found it, crushed it one hand, and then he did it. His boot came up, fast, brutal. It slammed into her shin with a crack that echoed through the empty lot. Evelyn collapsed onto the gravel, her knees scraping hard, her hands breaking her fall. Gasoline dripped from the pump above, mingling with the blood on her jeans. And behind the station, a teenage boy froze, phone in hand. Recording. His breath caught, his heart racing, but his grip unshaken. Kessler loomed overhead, sneering. "That's where you belong," he said. Then he turned. Like it was over? But it wasn't. Because Evelyn Ward didn't stay down. She pressed one hand into the ground, pushed herself upright, slow, sure, like a mountain rising back from the quake. "Can you remember a moment where you were struck down, physically, emotionally, spiritually, but chose to rise anyway?" The pain was sharp, but it was the insult that burned deeper. And something had shifted. In her, yes, but also in the world around her. The clock had started. The storm was about to break. By the time Evelyn Ward reached the edge of the gas station lot, her phone was already buzzing. She didn't need to check who it was. She knew the rhythm of that encrypted line. Director Olson, from FBI Strategic Operations. He never called without cause. Her voice was low, composed, when she answered. "Ward, we got a flag," Olson said without preamble. "Body cam alert just triggered from Monroe County. Something happened." "He assaulted me," she said plainly, "shoved me, searched my car, kicked me, all on civilian video." Silence answered, heavy and brimming with implication. Then Olson said only 2 words. "We're on it." Evelyn didn't smile. Not out of restraint, but because she was already moving, already planning, already switching gears. She wasn't just responding to an incident anymore. She was preparing to take the whole machine apart. From a diner booth an hour later, Evelyn scanned her laptop as her coffee cooled untouched. Deputy Ryan Kessler's personnel file stared back at her like a confession. 4 prior complaints for excessive force, all dismissed, mostly young men of color, 1 Latina nurse, a pattern buried in blust. Each report had a signature at the bottom. Sheriff Lynette Coulter, 3-term incumbent, untouchable. Or so she thought. Evelyn's fingers hovered over the keyboard, heart steady, purpose sharpening like a blade. Because this wasn't about one man with a badge anymore. It was about how many people chose to look away. How many promotions, how many favors traded to keep the complaints quiet. How many warnings were ignored because the victim didn't wear a badge of their own. Let me ask you something. What do you think is more dangerous, the man who commits the act or the system that lets him do it again and again? Evelyn pressed save on her first file. Pattern of misconduct. Preliminary findings. Not a report. A spark. And in places long used to silence, sparks like that don't just flicker. They burned. The fire started just after 11 p.m. Evelyn had just finished a secure call with a DOJ liaison when the lights outside her motel room flickered. Once, then again. A second later, the night lit up orange. Her SUV was in flames. She ran barefoot into the gravel lot, smoke clawing at her lungs, eyes burning from heat and disbelief. The fire had started fast, too fast, accelerant and intent. Glass crunched under her heel as she spotted the bottle on the ground. Molotov cocktail. And there, taped under a windshield wiper of the car beside it, a note in thick black marker. Stay in your lane. For a breath, Evelyn said nothing. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed. This wasn't random. This was a warning. But the thing about warnings, they only work on people who intend to retreat. Marcus arrived 10 minutes later, fire extinguisher in hand, his tires carving sharp curves into the gravel. He sprayed until the last hiss of flame died out, then turned to her, panting, furious. "They're scared," he said. She nodded once. Good. By morning, Evelyn filed a federal intimidation complaint. That same day, an anonymous leak inside the sheriff's department released the body cam footage. It showed more than the assault. It caught Kessler laughing as she struggled to her feet. It captured a racial slur muttered under his breath. Suddenly, it wasn't just her word against his. The world was watching. And still, they moved to silence her. That evening she received notice, suspended without hearing, no badge, no clearance. A gut punch, sharp and bureaucratic. The system she once upheld now closed ranks to protect itself. She stood in the mirror that night, staring at her own reflection. Do you know what it feels like to give everything to a system, only to have it turn on you the second you demand better? She didn't cry. She pecked. Because if they were going to strip her title, they'd also strip away the last thing holding her back. Now she was free to burn the whole rotten tree. The footage hit the internet just after midnight. No edits, no music, no commentary. Just raw, unflinching truth. Deputy Ryan Kessler's boot striking Evelyn Ward's leg, her body crumpling to the gravel. His voice muttering, "That's where you belong." Then laughter, quiet, cruel, and caught on his own body cam. It spread like wildfire, first through local feeds, then national headlines. By sunrise, it was everywhere. The video didn't just show an assault. It showed a system built to look away. And now it couldn't. Evelyn didn't post it herself. She didn't have to. The teenager who filmed it shared it with a friend, who shared it again, until millions had seen the truth. By mid-morning, hashtags were trending. Justice for Evelyn, Fire Kessler, DeSanto, The Shield. News vans parked outside Monroe County's courthouse. Reporters shoved microphones toward officials who suddenly couldn't remember how to speak. And inside a cabin miles away, Evelyn Ward watched in silence. No uniform, no badge. And all the power. She leaned over her laptop, uploading the internal memo that had landed in her lap 2 days earlier. an unfiled disciplinary recommendation against Kessler from 6 months back. It had been buried, overruled, signed off by Sheriff Coulter. They knew. They always knew. Evelyn clicked send and the document joined the digital storm. Let me ask you something. When the truth finally comes out, do you feel relief or rage? Marcus called her 5 minutes later. They're spiraling, he said. Coulter issued a press statement. Empty words, said she's deeply concerned. Didn't even say your name. She will, Evelyn replied, and she meant it. As the dam had cracked, the water was rising, and this time it wasn't going back in the reservoir. They thought the fire was the end. They didn't know it was just her beginning. The arrests began at dawn. First came Sheriff Lynette Coulter, taken from her sprawling ranch house in a federal car, wrapped in a bathrobe and silence. She didn't protest. She didn't ask why. She knew. An hour later, Deputy Ryan Kessler was pulled from his driveway mid-rant, still clinging to some fantasy that he could spin his way out of this. But spin doesn't work when the footage is already playing in every living room from Birmingham to Boston. By noon, cameras swarmed the courthouse steps. And at the center of it all stood Evelyn Ward. She didn't arrive in a motorcade. She didn't bring security. She walked alone, her limp masked by resolve, her eyes sharp as ever. This time, her badge gleamed openly on her belt. Microphones reached for her as she stepped to the podium. Voices clashed. Are you pressing charges? What happens now? Are you afraid? She raised a hand, not to quiet them, but to anchor the moment. My name is Evelyn Ward, she began. I've served this country for 27 years. I have fought trafficking, dismantled cartels, and stood in war rooms with men who thought their power was a shield. But nothing has prepared me more than what happened at that gas station. The crowd hushed. The world listened. This isn't about a boot, she said. It's about a system that protects the abuser, silences the victim, and punishes those who speak. And then, her voice dropped, measured, heavy. Well, I've spoken. Have you ever watched a person walk into the heart of a burning building, not to escape, but to light the final match? Because that's what Evelyn did that day. She didn't just expose the rot. She made sure it could never grow back. Behind her, indictments were filed, federal investigations expanded, names whispered in back rooms were suddenly printed on warrants. The house was burning. And Evelyn? She was already drawing the blueprints for something new. A year later, the gas station looked different. The cracked pavement had been repaved. The pumps were new, gleaming beneath a fresh awning. No trace of the blood, the gravel, or the heat remained. Except for one thing. Near the edge of the lot, where the sun struck just right in the afternoon, stood a bronze plaque, bolted to a stone pedestal. Simple, unadorned. It read, "Here's at a woman, she didn't fall." Evelyn Ward stood before it now, hands in her coat pockets, the breeze lifting the hem of her scarf. No cameras, no news vans, just her and memory. She had driven alone, without fanfare, needing to see this place not as it was in headlines, but as it had always been. Quiet, unassuming, dangerous in the way only silence can be. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the bronze. Not her title, not her badge, just her face. Older now, a little harder around the edges, but still standing. She reached out and touched the metal. It was cool beneath her fingertips. Because some truths don't fade. They root. They rise. They wait for the next person who needs to see that someone once stood here and didn't go down. Evelyn turned back toward her car, engine still warm. In the back seat, a folder labeled Oversight Committee Briefing, Phase 2. The fight hadn't ended, it had just evolved. Can I ask you something? What if the next storm isn't out there, waiting to pass? What if you are the storm? She paused at the driver's side, one last glance over her shoulder at the plaque, the pumps, the sky. Then she got in, closed the door, and pulled away from the station, not to leave it behind, but to carry it forward. Because Evelyn Ward was never just a woman in a video. She was a reckoning. And reckonings don't rest. Life has a way of testing us when we least expect it. Sometimes it comes not as a great tragedy, but as a quiet injustice. An insult ignored, a truth denied, a dignity bruised. The story of Evelyn Ward reminds us that age, title, or status don't shield us from unfairness, but they also don't define our strength. Her story isn't just about standing up to cruelty. It's about choosing to keep standing when the easier path would be to sit in silence. For those of us who have lived through decades of change, through civil rights, through war and peace, through love and loss, there is something familiar in her resolve, the courage to speak, not loudly, but clearly. The decision to act, not out of anger, but out of conviction. In our own lives, the injustices we face may not make headlines. They may come quietly, in hospitals, boardrooms, or even around the dinner table. But Evelyn's story reminds us we are never too old to stand for what is right, and sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply not back down. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs someone willing to carry it forward, one steady step at a time. She stood at her kitchen window as morning light spilled gently across the counter. The coffee in her hands had gone lukewarm, but she didn't mind. Outside, the world moved on, cars passing, birdsong rising. But inside, Evelyn Ward breathed in the kind of peace that doesn't ask for applause, the kind that comes after standing through fire and still being whole. Not untouched, but unbroken. Justice hadn't arrived all at once. It came in pieces. An arrest here, a policy change there, a voice finally heard. The system she challenged had not been rebuilt overnight, but it had been cracked open wide enough for truth to take root. And that, she knew, was how healing begins. Not by forgetting, but by remembering with purpose. If this story stayed with you, share it. Subscribe to Echoes of Racism so these voices don't fade into silence. In the meantime, I've chosen 2 stories I think will move you just as much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.